A really great question you can ask yourself to make sure you're looking at the right things is, if you were stranded on an island and you only had one sheet that you could use to understand whether or not your sales performance is good or bad, what are the 6 to 8 metrics that you would put on that sheet?
I love this. That's great. So what are these 6 to 8 metrics? Like, what would you want to see on a sheet like that if you're hopefully on a tropical island somewhere?
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah. Well, I mean, I'll take my personal opinions out of it in terms of like what I personally would want to see, but in general, again, you want to align it to what your specific sales process looks like. So some examples of this might be, how many discovery calls are you completing in a given week, right? Because when we talk about leading indicators, at least from a sales side, we'll leave marketing out of this for now.
Okay. Yeah.
You know, the idea that if you can have more of these discovery calls in a given week, the more opportunities you're going to have fall out the bottom week over week, right? That's how you're building your pipeline.
Right.
So that might be a great example. Maybe an example on the trailing indicator side is, or maybe I'm not going to say trailing, it's like right in between leading and trailing, might be the value of your pipeline. So in other words, what is the total value of the deals that are in motion at this moment in time?
Yeah.
So if you have 10 deals and let's say they're all worth $10,000, you've got $100,000 in your pipeline. And so some companies say, in order for us to know that we're going to hit quota, we need to have X value of pipeline for that to happen.
Right. Because usually you know your percentage, your closing percentage, so you can just do some quick math and figure out like the pipeline has to have X in order for us to hit this percentage. Yeah. Right.
And to bring it back to the stages, like with impact, we only start to measure our pipeline value at a certain point in our process. And that's usually after we've determined that it's a well-qualified opportunity, right? Because if you measure pipeline value of an unqualified opportunity, is it really something that you can anticipate closing? Probably not.
Right.
So you want to be able to weed those things out before you really start to measure your pipeline, measure your forecast, and it'll give you a better indication of whether or not you're going to hit quota.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. So it's really looking at just not pipeline in general, but qualified, like how qualified people are in that pipeline, and where you as a company draw that line for qualification. And if you can usually tell to a degree of like, okay, I think they're going to move forward versus like this person's just kicking tires and it's not going to happen. Because otherwise then you're just inflating the numbers. It looks like, oh, we have $1 million in the pipeline, but only 50% of it's actually legitimate. So you don't have $1 million in your pipeline.
Yeah. And you're wasting your sales team's time, right? Like you don't want your sales team focusing on opportunities that are not going to close.
Right.
And you don't, to your point, want to give the rest of your organization the view that more is going to close than actually is.